everybody for joining. I will ask that you all please mute yourselves. We have a really special presentation tonight, a great opportunity to learn about Bobsled Israel. And I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine and a friend of Maccabi USA, Tamar Simon. Tamar is a Maccabi USA alum. She's a voting member of our board of directors. She is Maccabi USA's representative to the Global Maccabi Future Leaders Forum, FLF, and chairs our Maccabi FLF and Fun Runs. Tamar is also on the executive board of Bobsled Israel. Professionally, she runs Mean Streets Management. It's a film distribution, marketing, and PR firm, and talent and speakers management company. She also played basketball in high school and occasionally plays beach volleyball. Really? All right.
Thank
Tamar,
you.
thanks for being with us tonight. It's going to be a really special time together, so we really appreciate you, and I'll give you the floor.
Thank you so much, Shane. That was half of my intro, so it'll be really short. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Tamar Simon. As Shane said, I'm an alum of Maccabi USA, and I'm a board member, and I chair the fun runs that we're working on also for Maccabi USA. And I'm also on the executive board of Israel's Olympic Bobsled and Skeleton Federation, which is called BSI, Bobsleigh Skeleton Israel. Thank you to Shane and everyone at Maccabi USA for hosting this Maccabi USA at home discussion tonight. And I also just hope everyone's doing okay and holding up during this really crazy time. It's always really great to get together and talk about sports and how much we love sports. And one of my favorite sports besides basketball, of course, is bobsled. So I've been a volunteer with BSI for around 10 years. The federation's history starts around 18 years ago in like 2002, when 2 Jews from the Bay Area and 1 Jew from Canada decided they wanted to start a bobsled team and represent Israel. And Israel's 2-man bobsled team was born. The Canadian, David Graves from Winnipeg, has been president of BSI since 2010. He's here with us virtually, as is Larry Sidney, one of our retired Israeli skeleton sliders and current Secretary General of BSI. You can find them on the chat to say hi. So the story of BSI from 2002 to 2020 is really quite a journey. Today, BSI represents 3 skeleton sliders and a bobsled team with 5 alternate brakemen. In 2018, AJ Edelman was the first sliding athlete to qualify for an Olympic Games for Israel and competed in skeleton in Korea. That same season, Dave Nicholls made Aliyah and joined BSI, and Israel's bobsled team was reborn. I was tracking and posting Dave's 2017-2018 season, and then I got to meet the man behind the bobsled in Tel Aviv right after the 2018 Maccabi Youth Games, where I was a manager and assistant coach for Maccabi USA. Dave holds the title of Israel's first medalist and gold medalist in bobsled in 2019. In that season, Dave qualified Israel for the first time since 2005 to compete in the World Championships for bobsled in Whistler, Vancouver, in Canada. Dave is also a silver and bronze World Cup medalist. And during this past season, Dave and his 4-man team won their first bobsled race in Park City, Utah, beating out the Jamaicans. Before I introduce Dave, we're going to show a video from World Championships in Whistler in 2019. Anyway, that's just a little taste of bobsled. Do not try that at home. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dave Nicholls.
Shalom, ma shlomcha, ma shlomech, ma koreh. Ivrit or English? English is okay? It's all good. Thank you so much, Tamar. Thank you, Tamar, for all the kind words, and thank you to Shane and Maccabi USA for having me on the program this evening. I really appreciate it. And also thank you to everybody who's joining us from home for Bobsled and Skeleton 101. So I'm really excited to share with all of you a little bit about my story, a little bit about the exciting sport of bobsled and skeleton, and some of the criteria that our coach and our team is actually looking for as we move ahead into the next season and our journey to 2022. So I'll chat a little bit about what we do, how we do it, how you're not supposed to do it, and where and when we do it, and how you can get involved. And if you feel you meet the criteria and what it takes to handle 4 or 5 Gs sliding down a slippery, icy track at 75 to 100 miles an hour with a whole bunch of stuff going on all at once. So anyway, thanks again for everybody for joining in. I appreciate it. So let's begin. I'll start with a little bit about myself and go from there. I was always pretty athletic, at least I thought so anyway. I don't know about the coaches or anybody else, and I always had an interest in sport, and I was lucky enough to receive a ski scholarship to Colorado State University many moons ago. And my sport there was giant slalom and downhill. So speed was really not a surprise or anything strange to me. But unfortunately, after an out of control snowboarder hit me from behind, he was doing about 70 miles an hour, I was told. And I was pretty much just standing there getting ready to run some gates for practice for the race team. I experienced an injury to my back and my neck and my spinal cord. So that resulted in me actually having to use a wheelchair since then to get around and figure out how to do things differently. And then I think it was back in 2005, I was invited up to the Utah Olympic Park up in here in Park City, Utah. And I didn't know why, but the woman said to me, just come to the park. And I said, why? And she said, just come. And I said, why? And she said, just come. And I said, why? And this continued for a good 5 minutes because I'm a little stubborn for those of you guys that know me. And anyway, I finally gave in and I said, okay, I'll come. And it was there when I was given the opportunity to load into a sled for the very first time, again, back in 2004, 2005. And the sled had a few different adaptations on it. And I have my show and tell here of actually, I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's a picture of what that sled looked like with the roll cage on it. And it actually had a higher back and a 4-part harness system to kind of protect you in case things didn't go the way they were supposed to go. But it was really an incredible experience, and it's really one that changed my life. And of course, you don't start from the top. You start from some of the lower starts on the track, much the same you would start when you're learning to ski or snowboard. You don't start at the top. So anyway, it was an absolute amazing experience. And from there, I was convinced that I just had to share it with some of my other buddies and friends that were injured in either in the war or had some kind of trauma or accident, amputee or other wheelchair athletes. Because I thought, wow, I mean, wouldn't this be great if this could become a Paralympic sport, an official Paralympic sport? So together, myself and another wheelchair athlete and an amputee started the world's first adaptive bobsled team and nonprofit organization, and that was known as the Adaptive Bobsled and Skeleton Association. And thanks to Superman, aka Christopher, and the Dana Reeve Foundation, we received a grant for our very first 2-man sled. And you know, the idea of us wheelchair athletes and amputees having an equal opportunity to train and participate and compete in the sport in the USA and around the world really became, I didn't know it at the time, but a lifelong mission and a goal of mine. So fast forward, many nations begun to get involved in the sport, and the criteria was set up by the International Paralympic Committee, and they required a minimum of 12 to 14 nations to be competing in World Cups throughout the season. And I thought to myself, well, gosh, you know, wouldn't it be a mitzvah and just awesome if I could help an Israeli bobsled team and really others even in that part of the world experience the thrill and the exhilaration of the sport, at the same time promoting my Jewish heritage and the state of Israel. Little did I know that there was already a team 20 years ago. So in any case, if it wasn't really for that and that team, we probably wouldn't have had these opportunities that we have today. And as Tamar explained, it was a member of that team that helped form BSI, as we know it today, the Israeli Bobsled and Skeleton Association. And that's the governing body of our sport that we know today. So kudos and hats off to our president and chairman, again, who was one of the original brakemen in that sled, Mr. Dave Greaves. So thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. So soon the idea came to me about making Aliyah and actually sliding for the state of Israel and helping our long-range goal to qualify the sport for the Paralympics become a reality. So I became the first member of the new and exciting sport of para-bobsled for guys like me for the team of Israel. And that was pretty exciting. And I really feel blessed to have that opportunity to compete and be a member of the team. Para-bobsled is meant for, that's the discipline that's meant for guys in chairs like myself, paraplegics or above the knee amputees. And we slide in what's called a monobob, or a one-person sled. And it uses a machine with a uniform push at the start. So everybody kind of has an equal opportunity in terms of time to make it down the track, because the sport of bobsled is not just won by a second. It's won by either a 100th of a second or a 10th of a second, believe it or not. So it's absolutely crazy. If you sneeze or your brakeman sneezes, the race could be all over. So you really have to have like focus, total concentration, know what's going on, no room for mistakes. So anyway, before I forget, I want to preface this part of the conversation to let everyone know that this sport is not just for men, it's also for women. So if you are watching or you know someone who is of the female persuasion and wants to have an experience or learn the sport, you know, please don't think that it's only for men, because I know for a fact that the Israeli Federation, as well as other federations around the world, are growing the sport for women as well. So keep that in mind. So I'll just go through the disciplines real quick of the sport. We have, as I say, parabob or monobob, which is a one-person sled. The next discipline is two-man or two women. And the other discipline, which I'm really working to compete in, is four-man discipline. Or for women, it's combined women and men. Unfortunately, women don't have the international opportunity to compete together as a four-woman team. It's not a discipline yet, but they can compete together with other men and have a combined team. So those are the disciplines of bobsled. But there's another sport that I'm just going to mention a little bit about because it's super fun, but I'm not an expert in that sport, but I still want to share it with you because it's part of our federation. The other sport is known as skeleton. And skeleton, you have to be a little bit nuts, but anyway, that's the sport where you go head first down the same track that you saw there, going 75, 80, 100 miles an hour, whatever, head first with your chin only about an inch off the ice, and you're on what looks like a little bit of a longer lunch tray, if you will. So there's not a whole lot of your body on the sled or covering you. That's why I said you have to be a little bit like Meshuggah, right? We all know that word. Anyway, I actually had an opportunity to try that when the international governing body of the sport, the IBSF, was beta testing some type of a gizmo that would kind of hold my legs up off the ice, because when you're going at that speed, you don't want your legs to touch the ice or your toes to touch the ice unless you're doing some kind of emergency steer. So anyway, I had the chance to experience that from one of the lower starts, and I can say it was absolutely amazing. It was so much fun. Not the first day I did it because I actually busted my hand, but the second day they adjusted my equipment. Equipment is everything. And I just had a great time. I made it all the way from like the junior start all the way down to the finish dock, which a lot of times you don't, because you don't have all the speed from the top that you normally have. So it's like surfing on ice. That's the only way I can explain it. So anyway, if you have an interest in that, you can contact our federation as well, and we'll give you all that information when we get to the end of the presentation. So let's talk a little bit about training. There's off-season training, and of course there's on-ice training. Off-season training includes weight training for strength, conditioning, and sprinting. Our sport really doesn't rely much on in the way of endurance, if you will, other than the fact that you really have to maintain your composure going 80 to 100 miles an hour with, as I say, 4 to 5 Gs. So if you are a sprinter and you have long strides with explosive starts off the blocks, that can be a plus for you in either bobsled or skeleton. And most of us train in North America in Lake Placid or Park City, Utah, or Canada. And in fact, Canada has the only off-season indoor track in North America where you can practice your starts, practice your push, practice your loading into the sled. And it's called the Ice House, or Maison de Ice, or something like that in French. So anyway, there's also a number of tracks in Europe, like Innsbruck, Austria, or Lillehammer, Norway, which are good introductory tracks. Some of the equipment that we use are for skeleton or bobsled. There's special shoes that we have here, and I'll reach over to my show and tell. We have these Bobsled Spikes that they're called, and if you can see, there's these really small, little wiry kind of deals that either skeleton or bobsled use to help us push the sled and get started. There's really only one or two manufacturers, and they cost about $300 or $400 a pair, so be ready for that. Helmets, got to have a helmet. This one, as you can see, has been through a little bit of issues, so it happens. We have gloves and special speed suits, and also burn suits in case things don't go the way they're supposed to go. Competitions are held all over the world, with each country usually having either 2 or 3 spots for you to compete in, depending upon the race series. And all of the disciplines have opportunities to compete, in North America at the North America Cup, or in Europe at the Europa Cup. And for skeleton, they also have something called the ICC Series, Intercontinental Series. And then, of course, there's also World Cup for both. And the almost big show, other than the Olympics, is called the World Cup Championships, which is the highest level of competition in a non-Olympic year. And that's actually the video that you guys saw at the start, where it was so much fun. We were so lucky to qualify the sled for the World Championships in Vancouver. And our goal was really not to come in last and not to crash. And I can tell you one thing, that course, the first night of official training, there were 19 crashes. And Team Israel was not one of them. We did all crashing the week before. So anyway, that brings us to a little bit about recruiting criteria, if you will. And I'm just going to talk briefly about bobsled. But if you do have an interest, as I say, in skeleton, please feel free to contact the Federation as well, because they're always looking to identify quality talent and build the Israeli Federation and the Israeli team. You can also go to the website, or you can email me on bobsledgold@gmail.com. Again, it's bobsledgold@gmail.com, or you can go to our Facebook page under Israeli Olympic Bobsled and Skeleton Team for more information. But as far as the disciplines go for requirements, if you will, I can just give you some general information, just to give you an idea if you think you might fit into the groove, so to speak, to compete and participate in the sport. On the para side, you must not be able to be physically able to compete with able-bodied people. Simple, that's one of the guidelines. You must either have a spinal cord injury or some type of an amputation and be able to demonstrate that you can pull the brakes at least 60 pounds. And there's a grip machine that they actually give you and test you. The physical therapists or the doctors, they're there and they test you on that. PTs around the world have that. Physical therapists around the world have that device. You should also be strong enough to transfer in and out of the sled on your own and be physically fit. And there's additional criteria. Again, if you're interested in male or female, they have that available for you with the physical therapist that text you. They let you know about all that stuff in advance. For traditional bobsled, able-bodied 4-man discipline, our coach, who is a 3-time Olympian, as a matter of fact, he advises the following minimum criteria, just to give you an idea. And this is for men, but obviously be modified for women. But you should be approximately 200 pounds or 97 kilos, that you can run 30 meters in less than 3.9 seconds. You can bench press approximately 265 pounds. You can back squat approximately 441 pounds, and you can front squat approximately 353 pounds all the way down. So again, this is just some guidelines that our coach has set up. So if you don't feel you can do that, or if you're too close or too far, don't be discouraged. We actually have a developmental coach who would probably love to hear from you as well. So that 441 is actually a conversion from kilos. So that's why we mentioned 441. Coach and I have spoken about the qualifications for women again, but if you have an interest in the sport, don't be discouraged by these numbers. I'm sure they're going to be adjusted. And if you have any interest in competing with me or for the state of Israel, you need to have also Israeli citizenship, or can be an Israeli, American Israeli dual citizen. You can do Aliyah if you like, as I did, as Tamar mentioned. And I'd be willing to help you with that if you have, if you don't have information on that or just not sure about how to go about that. But there is an organization that I could refer you to help you with your Aliyah. And if you're watching and you have an interest in the sliding sports and you're not an American or you're not Israeli and you want more information, we can help you put you in contact with your federation as well. And one last note, some of you might be thinking about the sport where you go down the track on your back. That is called luge, which is generally not included or grouped in with bobsled or skeleton. It's really its own separate deal. They have their own separate federation and their own separate competitions. But anyway, if you do have an interest in the sport and you don't feel that you meet these qualifications, I'm happy to refer you to AJ, who is our developmental athlete, coach person, if you will. He is also Israel's first skeleton athlete and our very first sliding sport athlete to participate in the sport at the Olympics, which is huge for the state of Israel. And by the way, someone was kind enough to give me the conversion. That's 200 kilos. 441 pounds is 200 kilos. So it's not as arbitrary as you might think. So ladies and gentlemen, I have enjoyed sharing with you guys everything that I know, which isn't a whole lot, believe it or not, about bobsled and skeleton. And I just thought maybe we'd open it up to some Q&A or maybe share some pictures. So thank you again for everybody for participating. I really appreciate it. Feel free to come out to any of the races in Lake Placid or Park City, or if you're on the other side of the globe, wherever those are, in Germany or Austria or Switzerland, or I don't think there's any bobsled tracks in Israel yet, but believe it or not, there is a ski resort, and you never know. One day it might happen. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you so much, Shane and Tamar, again, for this opportunity to share. Let's go with some questions and Q&A.
Thank you, Dave. Shane, I think there's some photos. They run through some photos for everyone. Let's try to do that quick and with just a little commentary. Yeah, we want to just welcome our Olympic skeleton slider, AJ Edelman, has actually also joined us. So welcome, AJ. He's also retired now, and he's on the board and helps with athlete development. Okay, let me try this share screen thing again. Photos. Not here. Hold on. Okay.
I was just told that Lady Gaga in Gematria is 441. I like that.
Okay, let's see if this works. Okay,
This
so
is
this is,
that's
oh,
our
go ahead,
logo.
Dave, go.
Yeah, this is our logo designed by our federation. We have, of course, the Star of David on the left. We have a two-man classic bobsled on the right. And I don't know if that's me as the pilot or not, because I don't have white hair, but we have AJ down there at the bottom. He's sliding a skeleton on the left side. So that's our crest that goes on our uniforms, and that's part of our logo. Oh, this looks like our original bobsled team there. And there we have Dave Greaves, who is our current chairman of our federation. So again, if it wasn't for him keeping this going and putting it together, we wouldn't be here right now. So kudos to him.
There's Dave.
There's that guy. That's your oh my gosh, this is when I was sliding for the USA, and that's our classic two-man sled that we got from Dana Reeve and Christopher Reeve Foundation. You see the little Jewish flag and our Star of David there on the left, the Israeli flag, and of course the eagle. And that was my brakeman there. And I think this is a video of Lake Placid track with one of the first times ever in 18, 20 years, the Israelis had a sled going down the Lake Placid track here. That's curve 12. And actually made it all the way down, going through a straightaway here. This is some of the guys that helped us win our first medal in Utah, Park City, Utah, in the 4-man race. So kudos to all those guys. And there's another picture of us actually in Lake Placid. We're all kind of sitting on the back of the sled there. And this is our first race in 4-man in Park City, just to give you a quick snapshot of that. And this is the gold medal run that we had in Lake Placid. And that's a monobob, a one-person sled there. So you can check that out there. And that's a famous curve. And there we have one of our newest pilots is TJ. He has actually been to Israel with me, swam in the Galilee, and loves, no, that's not Steve Holcomb. That is one of our other, believe it or not. Somebody asked if that was Steve, but that was not Steve. So, and that's again a monobob on the Park City track, and the frame is correct, ladies and gentlemen. That is the angle and the direction that the sled is taking. So you're hitting some G's there. It's a pretty tight curve. Again, a monobob. Yours truly driving there. And that was the video. And there's a little ceremony that we had in, I think it was when we won the bronze medal in Park City. And there we have the podium with of course, the Israeli flag. That is the medal that we won in Park City for the 4-man team. This was, I think, actually last year where we had a tie for 3rd or 4th place, I don't remember, in the Paris side of the sport. And there it is, our 4-man bobsled and North America Cup medal. That's a good picture, like that. The incredible, awesome sport of surfing on ice. This is skeleton, ladies and gentlemen.
And this is, oh, sorry. This is Brad Chalupsky, our first skeleton slider.
Yes, there you go. That's Brad, yep. I think that's AJ at the Olympics. So hats off to him there.
Samson hats off to AJ.
Awesome speed suit there. Incredible.
This is, I think this is,
Joel.
This is Joel. This is our team captain.
That's a monobob race with Joel and I. Joel actually ran that race for us to kind of like the pilot car on a racetrack, if you will, testing out the ice, making sure the cameras are all set properly. Not sure who that is.
That's Larry.
Okay. Wow, vintage. I like it.
And if we have one more, oh no, there's the 3. There's
AJ, skeleton.
AJ, Larry, and Joel.
That's a great picture.
And there's our lady. There's our female slider.
Georgie from the UK.
And that's our newest slider, Jared, from Miami.
There you go. He's got some quads going on there, huh? Oh, Calgary. This is looking down the Calgary track there. Awesome. Any questions that you guys have? I'll be more than happy to answer. Here's a question. Why is it unusual to have telemetry installed on the sleds? Those are those antennas that you see are really for the timing for the Omega clocks, if that's what you're referring to, because again, we're talking about not just 1 second, not even half a second, but winning or losing by could be 100th of a second. So if that's what you're talking about, I hope that answers your question. Any others?
Oh,
How do you learn the racing line of a new bobsled track? Are there any simulators for bobsled? No, I mean besides, okay, that's another question. I'll come back to that in a second. That's a good question. You actually, if you can walk, you walk down the track. Some coaches have you walk up the track, and you're with the coach, and they're explaining that in this particular curve, you want to enter that curve middle left. Then they'll show you, sometimes they have a laser pointer. Each curve might have one pressure, might have two pressures, might have three pressures. It depends. Every curve is different. And that's part of the challenge of the sport, because generally you can only control the sled, just like a ski, when it's under pressure. So you have to know where those pressures are. And if you miss one of those pressures, it could be the difference of finishing on four runners or finishing on your head. So you have to know that. And so to learn the track, you walk down the track, you watch video of it, and you work with your coach and your teammates and share information as well. It's a unique family. It's not a huge sport. So most athletes are good to talk about, well, how do you handle curve 6? How do you handle your entrance to curve 4? And you have to know as a pilot, and you should know as a brakeman as well, because the brakeman can be a huge help to the pilot, especially if you hit an entrance. You can't remember everything as the pilot. It's coming at you too fast. But at the end of the run, if your pilot says, Dave, I think you hit the left wall on the entrance of curve 5, then you know to improve on that next time. So I hope that answers your question. Someone had another question, I think, about, again, the telemetry, and I missed it. I don't see that question. Any other questions? Or
Seth Goldberg is here. He's a Maccabi USA wheelchair basketball athlete. Seth, you want to ask your question? Can you open your mic?
Absolutely. It's better than typing it. Dave, talking about the BSI and, the Israeli team, how supportive is the Israeli Federation with the para bobsled, as far as like any support or anything like that?
Well, just let me clarify your question, because are you talking about the Israeli Olympic Committee that oversees all Olympic sports for Israel, or are you talking about our? That is a question, yes?
Yes.
I can tell you this, that we're on their radar, and please understand that this is a cold weather sport, if you will. And thank you to our federation, Bobsled Skeleton Israel, and of course, mainly what AJ accomplished as our first slider to make it to the Olympics, and some of what I accomplished in our team last season. We're now on their radar, and I think that they will continue to be supportive of what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve. So that's really the best way I could answer your question. If you want to email me, I could put you in touch with folks from the Federation that could better answer that question. But when we go to Tel Aviv and we have those meetings, they're pretty dang supportive of what we're doing. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And my final question is, is there a USA team as well, or is there not a USA team?
There is a USA team, yes. It's actually the team that I started, and it's still going pretty strong.
Okay, thank you.
Can I help answer that question? Would that be okay if I just jumped in for a sec? Regarding
David, go. David Graves.
Just a question. Was the question about the Para-Olympic Committee? About support?
I think the question was
a little bit of both. A little bit of both.
Okay, so as Dave indicated in his presentation, that one of the objectives is to have the sport of parabob or monobob included in the Paralympic Games. Currently, it is not an Olympic sport. So the main reason we haven't had the kind of support from the Israeli Paralympic Committee and they've been very supportive in terms of watching our progress and meeting with us whenever we have our team meetings, but they can't provide any financial support, for example, until we become an Olympic sport, because they are the Israeli Para-Olympic Committee. So until the sport of para bob becomes a formalized sport at the games, we will continue our efforts as part of the global community to petition and encourage the International Olympic Committee to accept it, monobob or parabob, as a new sport, and that will be the time that we'll be able to have a more formal relationship with the Paralympic Committee of Israel. That's really the only sticking point. And when Dave and I met with them last summer or the summer before, they said exactly that. They were following the news. They knew before we did maybe that it had been rejected for 2022, but the push is now for 2026. And they said, as soon as it happens, we'll be there to support you in any way that we can. That's an important component to this relationship piece with the Paralympic Committee of Israel.
I can. I'm also happy to expand upon that and let everyone know that the information that I have is that the International Paralympic Committee will be voting again this September, because we believe as a group, as a team, as a sport, that we have completed all the criteria necessary at this point in time. So most of us are pretty positive that the vote in this summer, or it might be in September, will give a positive outlook for acceptance finally in the 2026 games. And who knows, what will happen. Maybe it may even be earlier. Who knows? I mean, I think it was adaptive snowboarding got in 6 months before the Olympics. So we'll see what happens. But I can tell you that they are supportive, because they gave me this beautiful statue, if you will, this little piece from the Israeli Paralympic Committee when we were there in Tel Aviv with the meeting. So, we're just waiting for it to happen like the rest of us. So. Any other questions? I'm Tyler.
Hey, I have a question. So I have experience with sled hockey and monoskiing. Is it any similar to those kinds of sports at all, or with the way you turn, or?
That's a great question. Let's see, sled hockey or skiing. Well, I'm actually a goalie for sled hockey, and I could say it's really, as far as skiing goes, maybe the speeds, but if you have some abs, it's helpful. If not, it just makes it a little bit more challenging. Everybody wears a belt anyway. There's a big belt that goes around your stomach on the para side.
Yeah.
But it's really more just about sliding. If you have that feeling of skiing and sliding and not trying to force turns or anything like that, then you have a better idea. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but again, it's just more about sliding and not trying to turn, if you will. So speed is a good thing if you're used to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, I think Victor has a question. He's our friend from Brazil that joined us. Victor, do you want to open up your mic?
Brazil, obrigado.
Oh, hang on. There you go.
Sure. I had made a question about telemetry here, and what I meant to ask is if there's any other information that's tracked besides timing. If you track lateral acceleration, steering input, brakes, any other information besides timing, really, if that's considered useful.
I think I'm understanding where your question's coming from. And first of all, the brakes are only used once you cross the finish line. If they're used any other time, you have big problems. As far as lines, if you will, and telemetry, less is more. Anytime you steer, you're creating friction, and you want to reduce the coefficient of friction. If you remember back to your high school physics days or what have you, the sled is actually the more you steer, it creates the part that touches the ice is actually traveling on a very thin film of water, believe it or not. But the more you steer, you're creating friction, you're slowing the sled down. So again, how do you win a race? One of the ways is less is more, to create less friction. So I don't know if that really helps answer your question, but again, you don't really use the brakes until the very end. And the less movement within the sled, you know, brakemen moving around, you don't want that at all. We put in some pads as well in the sleds, but there's some rules on that. They can only be a certain height, they can only be so big, all this stuff. But you don't want to be moving around when you're in the sled. Again, it's just really just about sliding forward, doing that turn when you need to do that turn as little as possible to control the sled so you don't go up through the roof or you don't hit a wall and flip over. So I don't know if that helps or not, but there you go.
Yeah, I understand. I just thought the telemetry might help quantify some of this instead of just going by feel. I come from the motorsport world where it's very common, so I was just curious about it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Dave, when we spoke, you told me about the special stipulations for you to be able to compete as an able-bodied event. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and also maybe a little bit about the road to Beijing? Like, what will it take to get there?
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you so much. We always welcome support on any level. First of all, there is a set of rules governing each race by the federation, meaning the international governing body of the sport. If you compare it to like FIFA, for example, for soccer, they're the international governing body of the sport. And there's a rule that says if you are a pilot and you sprain your ankle or you tear a hamstring, that you're still allowed to compete. Otherwise, it would take out the whole team. So Ireland, for example, that has one pilot and one brakeman and a two-man team, if they didn't have that rule, they would be completely out of the competition. So they allow someone like myself or someone who has torn their hamstring to load into the sled before it starts moving. And when we get a green light, we can have the guys in the back start running and pushing, loading into the sled, and away we go. So it's actually that rule that allows me to compete with other able-bodied athletes. And, you know, we're always looking to identify those guys that have the monster quads and can push and run, because, you know, if you've noticed, I'm not a small guy, but that's part of what we're looking to identify in some of our future athletes as far as my team goes and my situation, which is unique. And as far as the road to qualify, it's not an easy task, has been explained to me. But our coach believes that with the right folks behind me, we can earn enough points to hopefully qualify. But there's a lot that's involved to that, because each country has their own regulations, or will have their own regulations, in terms of your performance, in terms of your team's performance. And it's not going to be an easy path, but our plan is to, I just spoke with our coach yesterday, as a matter of fact, and with the appropriate fundraising, with the appropriate guidance and support from everyone that's involved, we're really hoping to move forward and earn points this season, enough points. This next season will be a test for us, really, to see if we're going to even be close in terms of what we do in terms of the four-man competition. You earn points based on your place. Obviously, if you win gold, you get a whole lot of points. And that's part of the criteria that help move you along the road to Beijing. So I hope that answers your question, but that's really what we're looking to do. And again, if you have an interest in the sport, or if you have someone that has an interest in the sport that you think might be helpful for our group or our team, or may want to start their own team, please don't hesitate to contact our federation and see, check in with AJ, and he'll talk about those other criteria that they're looking for with maybe two-man, if you will.
AJ actually had a question for you. He said, what's the most fun that you have on tour, sliding, traveling, or finding fun foods to eat?
Oh, really all of the above. I mean, just being able to participate and enjoy some of the culture of, for example, you know, in Switzerland, which is actually one of my favorite tracks. Incidentally, Switzerland has the only all natural track in the world that's built every year, brand new from ice and snow. And you actually go from one town all the way through the woods, seeing the little bunny rabbits and the deer, which I shouldn't be looking at when I'm driving. I should be looking at the track. And you end up in another town at the bottom, Celerina, which is absolutely beautiful. So I enjoy everything. The experience, meeting other people from around the world, and wearing the Israeli flag and the Israeli uniform and our federation's uniform, proudly representing Israel, and just mingling with all the other athletes. It's just a unique experience. It really is. And I'm really hoping and praying that we move forward and qualify for 2022. So we'll have to see. Someone has a question. Are there classification numbers in para bobsled that they do in other para sports? No, you just have to, there's no like N32 or T35. Basically, to qualify for the para side of the sport, as I said earlier, you just cannot be physically able to compete in terms of running and pushing and loading. You have to either be a spinal cord injured patient or have some type of weakness or paralysis to your limbs that don't allow you to do what able-bodied people can do. If you're an amputee, you can only be an above-the-knee amputee, and you still have to have some issue with your other limb as well. They're pretty specific on that, but it's loose as far as there's no different classification levels like there are in quad rugby or like there are in basketball. So it's, you know, you either have it or you don't.
Tell us about the sled a little bit. Where does the sled come from? Who maintains it? How does it get from place to place?
That's a good question. We were lucky enough to raise some funds to acquire a 4-man sled this season. And we actually got that sled from the Australian team. Heath has been a great supporter of our program and our federation. And it was his sled. And yes, Australia has a team. They had a few teams in the past Olympics as well. He actually was one of the gentlemen you saw in the video that was at the start at the Vancouver video that you saw. The sled is usually stored at one particular location wherever you might practice the most. But the International Federation does have transport usually within the continent. So they would transport the sled for us from the Lake Placid track to the Park City track. We don't have to worry about that. That's as far as, the equipment goes on the able-bodied side. As far as maintenance goes, it's the pilot's responsibility to make sure that the sled is in good working order, that the runners are tuned, that the bolts are tight, as far as the maintenance goes, it's really up to your group, your team, fellow athletes. On the para side, let me be clear with that, we don't have to worry about any of that stuff. On the para side, they have a group of mechanics and the federation, the international governing body of the sport, moves the sleds from Innsbruck to St. Moritz, Switzerland, to Lake Placid, to Canada. So they handle all that stuff on the para side. All we have to do is be in shape and show up and know what we're doing and know the track and win. Have fun too. But that's the difference. On the able-bodied side, as a pilot, as a team, we have to do all the maintenance and really make sure the runners are tuned up properly. Almost like skis too, because there's different conditions and different ice. You might use fat runners, you might use skinny runners, you might use a combination of them. and different runners give you different performance of the sled on the ice. So I hope that answers your question there.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up, and then we'll give a little bit more of our coming events and tell everybody how they can reach you and reach the Bobsled Israel team.
Sure.
Somebody said, Chad, did you have a question? Are there different divisions of para bobsled?
Yeah.
Sorry,
I was
Chad.
asking, like, there's like a heavyweight or lightweight division, or yeah.
No, unfortunately, I wish there was, because I happen to be like 6'4", and it's very difficult for me to maintain and qualify on the para side. There is a maximum weight, actually almost the same on the able-bodied side, but it's more based on the whole sled and what's in the sled. On the para side, you cannot be more than 100 kilos with your helmet, with all your equipment, with your gloves. 100 kilos is about 220 pounds. And they will take you and pull you off when you come off the track. On the able-bodied side, they pull you off right onto the scales, and you get in the sled with your shoes, with your helmet, with all your team members, and you can't be underweight and you can't be overweight. On the para side, they'll either do that, or you'll get out of the sled and they'll put you on the scale on a chair. They know the weight of the chair, so they'll put you on the scale with your equipment, and they'll see what it is, deduct the weight of the chair, and as long as you're under 220 pounds or 100 kilos, you're good, you qualify. And there's no different divisions, men and women, we all compete together. Matter of fact, there's a woman that won the gold medal in Calgary a few years ago. So there's just one division right now. It's just one para division. As long as you qualify, you're good to go.
Sounds really cool.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us. I just wanted to, while I still have your attention, let you know, if you enjoyed this program, that we have some other great events happening on Maccabi USA at home coming up real soon. First, this Saturday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to welcome the new week and bid farewell to Shabbat with Havdalah. That's led by an alum, Rabbi Shira Rosenblum. And then coming up Wednesday, the 20th of May, we have Yael Arad, Israel's first Olympic medalist. She's a judoka and be really incredible. And then on Thursday, the 21st, we have the President's Forum with some really excellent coaches and Maccabi USA alumni, Greg Gardner, Haley Mitchell, and Daniel Freeman. I'm going to send you all a follow-up email that has a link to the recording of this event and also a survey so you can tell us what you think and give us suggestions for new events. I really want to thank our special guest tonight, Dave Nicholls, and I want to thank Bobsled Israel and AJ Edelman joining us. And Tamar, do you want to say any parting words? She just entered.
Was that Tamar?
She just entered.
There she is.
Yeah,
chat.
sorry, it's a little confusing. I'll do it again.
So this is how you can find Dave and Bobsled Israel on social media, on Facebook, and on Instagram, and email Dave, bobsledgold@gmail.com. Best of luck, and thank you again for sharing your story and giving us some inspiration tonight.
Thank you.